By the time Jamin realized the woman sleeping beside him had sold him out, his enemies were already inside the building. That night, not later, not eventually, right then. Gunfire shattered glass 3 floors below him. The power blinked once, then again. His security team stopped answering their phones, one by one. He didn't know who pulled the trigger first. He only knew it wasn't his rivals. Someone closer did this. If you're watching this right now, drop your city and time in the comments. I want to see where you're listening from while this explodes. Jamin ran barefoot across marble floors, blood on the walls he paid for. His phone buzzed once, one message, one line. You trusted the wrong person. If you've ever been betrayed, not by enemies but by love, hit subscribe now. Because this story doesn't get safer. It gets worse. He ducked into a side exit and staggered into a diner glowing under dying neon. Coffee burned, plates rattled, nobody noticed him bleeding. And that's when the waitress slipped a folded napkin onto his table. No name, no smile, just 6 words written in red ink. Your wife sold you out. They're in position. Pause here for a second. Would you run, or would you go back inside and burn everything down? Tell me in the comments. Because what happened next, nobody saw coming. Jamin didn't pick up the napkin at first. He stared at it like it might explode. The waitress had already walked away, pretending to wipe a table that was already clean. Her hands were shaking, not the nervous flutter of a rookie. This was the controlled tremor of someone trying not to be seen panicking. 6 words, small handwriting, sharp slant. Too calm to be a prank, too specific to be coincidence. Jamin folded the napkin once, then again, then slid it into his pocket like it was just another receipt from a long night. Outside, sirens screamed closer, not distant, wrong direction, not chasing criminals, heading toward him. His phone buzzed again, no number, just a location pin, the building he'd just escaped. A second message followed, they know you ran. His jaw tightened. The waitress passed again, her eyes never meeting his, her voice barely above breath when she spoke. You can't stay. It wasn't advice. It was fear. Jamin stood, too fast. The chair scraped. The sound sliced through the diner like a blade. A truck backfired outside. Every head in the room turned, not to him, to the door. That's when he saw it. 2 men across the diner window, dark jackets. Wrong posture, right hands inside coats, not cops, hunters. Jamin flipped his collar up, angled his face away from the glass, and moved for the bathroom. The waitress was suddenly beside him. Back door, she whispered. Now. He didn't ask questions. He followed. The kitchen smelled of grease and old heat. A cook froze mid-motion as Jamin crossed through like he owned the place, like he wasn't bleeding somewhere under his clothes. The back door was already open. Night spilled in. The alley was narrow and damp. Trash bags glistened. Somewhere behind him, glass shattered. A gunshot cracked the air, then another. The waitress flinched but didn't scream. That mattered. Jamin grabbed her wrist, hard. Run, he said. And she did. They tore down the alley, shoes slapping water, breath cracking cold. He didn't know where they were going. He only knew where they couldn't stay. Another gunshot. Closer. A bullet sparked off brick. They rounded a corner. A black sedan rolled to a stop at the streetlight. The nearest window slid down just enough for a gun barrel to appear. 2 more shots. Jamin shoved the waitress out of the way, slammed into a parked car, rolled once, came up running. The waitress didn't freeze. She followed him. That mattered too. They cut through a laundromat, steam choking the air. Jamin felt heat explode across his shoulder. Pain bit deep. He didn't slow. He didn't scream. The exit was across the street. Just a few more steps. A hand grabbed the waitress's arm. She screamed. Jamin turned, shot without looking. The man dropped. No hesitation, no checking, just movement. They ran again. 3 blocks later, Yas. They collapsed inside an abandoned storefront with papered windows and a dead neon sign coughing blue light every few seconds. Silence followed. Too quiet. The kind that meant something worse was loading. The waitress leaned against the wall and slid slowly to the floor, breath shaking. Jamin locked the door, once, twice. Then he turned. For the first time, he really looked at her. She couldn't be more than early 20s, hair pulled back tight, uniform stained with grease and something darker, blood, not his. Her eyes were sharp, too sharp for a girl carrying plates. "Who are you?" he asked. She wiped her mouth with shaking fingers. "I was hoping you wouldn't ask that yet." His phone vibrated again. Another message, this one longer. "You always trusted your walls. They were never yours." He put the phone away slowly. Then his eyes locked back on her. "You said my wife sold me out." Her throat moved when she swallowed. "Yes." "And you wrote it like you were sure." She nodded. "And you ran like you had practiced." She hesitated, then nodded again. Sirens wailed in the distance, closer than before. Jamin's voice dropped. "You don't warn a man like me unless you already know what happens if you're wrong." She finally looked up. Her eyes were wet now, not weak, focused. "I wasn't wrong," she said. "I was late." The neon outside flickered again, blue, then dead. Darkness pooled around them. And for the first time that night, Jamin Kwan understood something had already gone terribly wrong. Not outside, not in the streets, but inside his own home, Jamin didn't show pain the way most men did. No groan, no limping. No hand pressed in panic to the wound burning through his shoulder. He moved like nothing had happened, which was usually how people bled out around him. The empty storefront smelled of dust and old paper. A thin slice of streetlight crawled under the door, cutting the dark into two uneven halves. Somewhere nearby, a car alarm wailed and then died like someone choking it off. Jamin walked the length of the room once, then again, slow, measured, the way he did when he was counting lives. The waitress stayed seated, knees pulled in, arms wrapped tight around herself like she could hold the world away if she tried hard enough. "You bleed quiet," she said. "So do smart people," he replied. He loosened his jacket and peeled the sleeve down. Blood soaked the fabric. Not pouring, just enough, the dangerous kind. He found a torn curtain from the back office, ripped a strip with his teeth and tied it cleanly around his shoulder. No bandage, no medicine, no mercy. When he finished, he finally sat, across from her, close enough to see the fear live in her pupils, not on the surface, deep. "You wrote my wife's name," he said, without writing her name. Her breathing hitched. "You could have said rival. You could have said police. You could have said inside job." She nodded slowly. "But you said wife." Silence filled the space between them, thick. "You don't guess something like that," he went on. "You know it." Her fingers curled into the hem of her uniform. "I know it," she whispered. Jamin leaned forward, not threatening, worse, interested. "Then tell me how." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing. Fear crawled back across her face, but this time it wasn't fear of him. It was fear of what would happen if she told the truth. He noticed, he always did. "You already crossed the line by warning me," he said. "Lies won't uncross it. They just get you buried on the wrong side of it." Her throat worked. "I didn't want to be brave," she said. "I wanted you alive." Jamin's eyes sharpened. Alive. Not safe, not free. Alive. Different word. "Why?" he asked. She didn't answer. Another siren rose and fell in the distance. He glanced at the boarded window and then back to her. "You didn't run when the shooting started," he said. "You didn't freeze. You didn't faint. You knew where the back door was without looking, and you didn't scream when you saw a gun." Her jaw tightened. "That's not normal for a waitress." "No," she admitted. "It's not." "Then stop pretending to be one." She looked away. And in that movement, something slipped. Not a lie, a mask. The girl in the diner was gone. What sat in front of him now watched like someone used to listening through walls, used to reading rooms, used to danger. You're not supposed to notice all that, she said. But I did. Yes, she murmured. You would. If this is already tying you up inside, subscribe now. This story doesn't let go gently. Jamin sat back, stared at the ceiling, at the cracks, at the spiderwebs of history in a place no one cared enough to save. Start talking, he said quietly, before talking stops being your choice. She hesitated, then breathed out hard. I knew your wife wasn't yours when I saw how she stood next to you, she said. That's not an answer. People in love lean, she said, toward each other even when they're angry, even when they're tired. Your wife never leaned, she positioned. Jamin said nothing because she was right. She watches you like you're a door, the girl continued. Not a man, a door she needs open. He shifted slightly, barely visible, but she caught it. You felt that too, she said. He said nothing again. The silence answered her. She swallowed and went on. I saw her meeting someone 3 weeks ago, she said. Away from your places, away from your people. Somewhere she thought she wasn't being watched. Where? He asked. An underground garage near Lenox, she said. White SUV, tinted windows, out-of-state plates. Men? Yes. How many? 3. Weapon-trained response. It rolled out of her too naturally. He filed that away. They weren't her bodyguards, she said. They didn't look at her like employees. They looked at her like an equal. Jamin's jaw flexed. And you saw all that from behind a coffee pot? Her mouth twisted. Sometimes, she said, you see more when nobody thinks you matter. That hit. Harder than it should have. You followed her? He asked. No, she said. I followed the money. Now he looked at her differently, and she knew it. I saw the accounts, she whispered. Hidden ones, layered ones, not under your name, not under hers. Ghost companies that smelled wrong. Smelled wrong how? Cold, she said. Like graves. He studied her face, the fear, the certainty, the way every word felt heavy. You were in over your head, he said. I still am, she replied. That's why I didn't run. That's why I waited for you. He stared at her for a long second. Then asked the one question that mattered. What's your name? She bit her lip, eyes flicked to the door, back to him. Neela. Not sure, not solid, like it wasn't real yet, or like it wasn't safe to give him the real one. Jamin nodded once. Nyla, he repeated. Then he stood, moved toward the door. Every muscle ready. When he reached it, he didn't open it. He rested his forehead briefly against the wood. Just enough to breathe. Just enough to feel the weight of what had shifted. His enemies weren't just outside anymore. They were likely sleeping in his bed. He opened his eyes, turned back to her. You saved my life tonight, he said. Her face softened for half a heartbeat, then he finished. That means someone's about to try very hard to take yours. Her expression closed, like a door locking. Then we better move, she said. Jamin reached into his pocket, pulled out a phone she hadn't seen before, not his main one, not one tracked by anyone. Then he said something that surprised them both. You're not going back to that diner. Nyla didn't argue. She just asked, where are we going? He looked at her, really looked this time, at the girl who wasn't a waitress, at the woman who snapped electric wires together inside his life, and he said, somewhere my wife doesn't own. Outside, the sirens were getting closer, and inside, something far more dangerous had begun. Rain started like someone flipping a switch, not the soft kind, the violent kind, the kind that erased footsteps and swallowed sound. Jamin pushed the door open just enough to look out. The street was empty the way a room feels empty when someone is still in it. Stay behind me, he said. Nyla didn't argue. That mattered. They moved low along the storefront, slipping into the rain-soaked night like smoke looking for somewhere to disappear. Neon signs buzzed and died above them. Windows reflected their shapes in broken pieces. Every reflection felt like someone watching. They crossed the street in silence. Their shoes slapped puddles. Her breath hitched when a car passed too slowly. "Left," he whispered. They cut through an alley that smelled like wet cardboard and old decisions. Halfway down, Jamin froze. Nyla stopped too. Not because he touched her, because she felt the shift in the air. Movement at the far end. A shape, wrong place, wrong stillness. They backed up. Slow, too slow. Someone stepped into the mouth of the alley behind them, then another. Jamin turned just as a flashlight flared to life, cutting a blade of white across the brick. Time collapsed. Nyla grabbed his jacket as he shoved her toward a rusted door on the wall. Inside, it didn't budge. Locked. Too loud to force. He pulled her the other way, ducked through an open service gate and into a laundromat humming like a dream that refused to end. Steam rolled thick off industrial dryers. Machines rattled like bones. The air burned hot and clean at the same time. They ran. Coins rattled inside metal trays as Nyla clipped one with her elbow. A janitor looked up, startled, mouth opening. Jamin shook his head once. The man closed it again. They tore through the back exit and burst into the rain on the opposite side of the block. Nyla stumbled. Jamin caught her, faster than thought, stronger than he looked. She looked up at him for one breath. Then they ran. Yaldi. Down side streets, past boarded shops, past closed bars with chairs stacked like skeletons. A car engine roared somewhere behind them, too close. A headlight cut through the rain, then another. Jamin ducked them between two abandoned buildings and into a narrow space so tight their shoulders brushed brick. Nyla's heart slammed against her ribs like it was trying to escape first. "Don't move," he breathed. The car rolled past, slow enough to feel intentional. The air held its breath. Nyla's fingers dug into his jacket without asking permission. She didn't even realize it. She just knew losing contact would feel too much like dying. The car stopped. Right at the corner, the engine idled. Jamin leaned slightly forward, blocking her from view. A door opened. Footsteps sliced through the rain. Once, twice. A flashlight flicked on. The beam skimmed trash bags, brick, a dripping pipe 10 inches from Jamin's shoulder. The light hovered. Nyla closed her eyes and counted. Not numbers, heartbeats. 1, 2, 3. The light moved on. Footsteps retreated. A door shut. The engine revved, then faded. When sound returned to the world, it came all at once. Rain, sirens, distant music, the hum of the city pretending nothing had happened. Nyla sagged. Jamin caught her again, still didn't comment, didn't ask if she was okay, didn't say a word. He just pulled her through the alley and back into motion. They finally stopped under an awning 3 streets away, both breathing like they'd outrun something bigger than men. Nyla slid down the wall and sat while the rain soaked her hair and her face and her thoughts into silence. Jamin stood guard, didn't lean, didn't rest. Just watched. After a moment, Nyla spoke without looking up. "You didn't leave me." He glanced at her. "You didn't freeze." She laughed weakly. "Barely counts as bravery." "It counts as survival," he said. A police cruiser rolled by at the intersection. Didn't slow, didn't care. The city had already moved on. The rain softened. Nyla looked up now. "Are they gone?" "For now," he said. She nodded, then opened her mouth again, closed it. Then, "If they catch me," she said quietly, "it won't be like you." He heard the difference immediately. "What do you mean?" "They won't kill me," she said. "Not right away." Jamin didn't flinch. That also mattered. "They'll want to know what I told you," she continued. "Who I am, how much I know, if you believed me." She finally looked him in the eye. "Really?" "That makes you dangerous," she said. "And it makes me disposable." He shook his head once. "No." Her lips curved sadly. "That's the same thing." His phone buzzed again. He didn't check it, didn't need to. Whatever waited in that screen had already found its way into his bones. "We're not staying in this city," he said. Nyla blinked. "Not tonight," he added. "Where then?" He glanced down the street, then back at her. "We disappear," he said. "We move quiet. We move wrong. We go where no one thinks to look." She stood slowly, unsteady. "So," she said, rain dripping from her lashes, "somewhere I don't exist." Jamin watched her carefully, then answered. "No," he said. "Somewhere you're impossible to find." She let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding, a small one, a grateful one. Lightning split the sky. For just a second, the city lit up like it was being exposed. And then it was dark again. They stepped into it together. While rain beat the city into confession, Yura Kwan stood perfectly still in a penthouse that never echoed. Atlanta shimmered below her like a stolen crown. Headlights crawled across highways. Towers blinked with quiet wealth. The glass walls reflected her in dozens of versions, all of them calm, all of them unreadable. She wore silk the color of old blood. No jewelry except the thin platinum band on her finger, the one the world thought meant loyalty. A phone rested on the marble counter behind her. It hadn't rung yet. That told her everything. Yura poured herself a drink she didn't plan to finish and watched the city like it was a chessboard. Where others saw lights, she saw routes. Where others imagined safety, she saw leverage. Her assistant hovered near the door, pale and silent. "Report," Yura said without looking. "He escaped," the assistant replied. "We lost visual after the diner." Yura didn't react, not even a flicker. "That wasn't the plan," the assistant added nervously. "No," Yura agreed. "It wasn't." She turned finally, eyes like polished glass. "And yet," she continued, "plans are only interesting when they fight back." The assistant swallowed. "There may have been interference," he said. "A waitress." That word did it. Not much, not outwardly. But Yura's fingers tightened around the glass just enough to whisper. "A waitress does not interfere with my life," she said. "People like that don't touch men like my husband." She set the glass down untouched. "Find her." "Yes, ma'am." "And tighten the perimeter," Yura added. "Not loud, quiet. If he feels hunted, he'll vanish." "I want him thinking he still has air." The assistant nodded and turned to go. "Wait." He stopped. Yura walked toward the bar cart and picked up a sealed envelope. No name, no return address, just wait. "Deliver this to the Lennox garage," she said. "You know which one." His throat moved. "Yes, ma'am." When the door closed behind him, Yura exhaled slowly through her nose. Not fear, annoyance. She walked into her bedroom suite where nothing had ever looked disturbed. Linen lay untouched. Perfume bottles stood like small weapons on glass trays. The bed looked like no one had ever failed to love in it. She sat at the edge and removed her shoes. From the nightstand, she pulled out a second phone, older, unregistered, burned with a life that didn't exist. She powered it on. One message waited. Status? She typed 3 words. Delay, not loss. Then she leaned back against the headboard and closed her eyes. For a moment, the woman fell away. The wife, the hostess, the crown. And the strategist surfaced. She remembered a younger man once, blood on his knuckles, fire behind his eyes, quiet ambition. She remembered thinking he was dangerous. She hadn't known he would become useful, or that she would become worse. Her phone vibrated again. This time a name flashed across the screen. Not Jamin, not anyone from his world, someone from hers. She answered. "Yes?" "He's alive," the voice on the other end said. Yura smiled, slow, private. "I know," she replied. "He always is." There was a pause. "And the girl?" Yura's eyes cooled. "That," she said softly, "is the complication." She cut the call, stood, and walked back to the window to stare down at the city like it owed her something. Somewhere in that sprawl of concrete and panic, A man she once owned was now running, and a girl he shouldn't care about was alive. Yura tilted her head thoughtfully. Interesting, she murmured to the glass. Then she picked up her drink and finally took a sip. It was a forgotten ranch-style place off a dead road outside the city, half swallowed by trees and noise that only existed at night. One porch bulb burned weak, drawing moths like secrets. Jamin unlocked the door with a key that looked too old to matter. It mattered. Inside, the house smelled like dust and wood and something unfinished. Furniture sat exactly where someone had left it years ago, as though the place was waiting for an ending that never came. Nyla stood in the doorway, scanning corners without thinking. Her eyes moved first, her shoulders followed. Jamin noticed. "You've been trained," he said. She didn't deny it. "I've been forced," she replied. He locked the door behind them and crossed the living room, checking windows by touch. He didn't flick lights on, didn't need to. The darkness obeyed him. Nyla finally exhaled, slow, careful. "Whatever that life you were in," she said, "it wasn't the one that's chasing you now." "Explain," he said. She walked toward the old kitchen, palms dragging along the counter like memory. "I didn't just see names," she said quietly. "I saw movement." He followed her. She stopped beside a dusty refrigerator and stared at nothing. "Accounts that don't exist don't go quiet," she continued. "They run, they breathe, they leave trails." Jamin folded his arms. "You track them." She nodded. "Not with software, with behavior." He arched an eyebrow. "Money behaves?" he asked. "Bad money panics," she replied. "And this money was scared." He leaned against the doorway. "So," he said, "tell me what you saw." Nyla closed her eyes. "Deposits timed with your absences," she said. "Withdrawals timed with your appearances. Every time you stepped into something public, something moved behind it." His jaw tightened. "And you didn't think to run?" "I did," she said, 3 months ago." He waited. "I didn't make it very far." That made the air heavier. "Who stopped you?" he asked. She hesitated, then spoke carefully. "Someone who looked like he didn't belong in their own skin." Jamin's eyes darkened. She continued. "They didn't threaten me. They didn't touch me. They didn't even raise their voice. They just handed me a receipt with a time and a place you would be." His pulse slowed. That wasn't relief. That was recognition. "So you didn't find your way to that diner," he said. "No," she replied. "I was sent." Silence. "How much did they know about me?" he asked. Nyla lifted her gaze. "Everything you never told anyone," she whispered. The house ticked around them, wood contracting, walls settling, old regret breathing. She swallowed. "They knew which nights you slept badly," she continued. "They knew which scar you hate. They knew you don't trust silence." He stiffened. And she knew it. "Missing if you're here but not subscribed, you might never see how deep this goes." "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked. Her voice dropped. "Because I didn't know which version of you I was meeting." He stepped closer. "And now?" She met his gaze. "Now I know you don't run from bullets," she said. "You run toward answers." That landed. "You said you followed the money," he said. "Where did it lead?" She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small bent device. An old flash drive. The kind nobody feared anymore. The most dangerous kind. "I copied what I could," she said. "Not because I wanted to know, but because someone wanted me to." "And did it show you what they wanted?" he asked. "No," she said softly. "It showed me what they forgot to erase." He took it from her, turned it over in his hand. "Say one thing about what's on this," he said. She breathed in, slow. "There are countries on it," she said. "City codes, names spelled wrong on purpose, dates that don't exist." "And her name?" he asked. Nyla didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her silence did. Jamin slid the drive into his pocket. "That was the moment you stopped being a waitress," he said. She laughed once, soft, empty. "I never started," she replied. Thunder rumbled outside. No storm yet, just warning. He moved toward the back hallway. "You eat?" he asked. She blinked. "Right now?" she said. "Yes," he replied. "If someone plans to end your life, the least you can do is interrupt them with dinner." She smiled despite herself. In the kitchen, he opened cabinets, found cans, rice, something pretending to be soup. "Better than neon and bullets," she said. "For now," he replied. As the food warmed on the stove, the silence shifted from dangerous to curious. She leaned against the counter. "You didn't ask my last name," she said. "No," he replied. "Why not?" He looked at her. "Because if you're lying," he said, "your first name will be the easiest one." That should have upset her. Instead, she felt lighter. Outside, a car passed, too slow. Jamin's head tilted, listening. "Down," he said. Nyla obeyed without asking. The lights went out, the house disappeared, and in that blackout, something moved on the porch. The porch didn't creak. That was wrong. Old houses always cried out when someone stepped onto them. This one stayed silent, like it was holding its breath. Jamin reached for the knife taped beneath the counter. Not flashy, not new, the kind that had ended conversations before they started. Nyla stayed on the floor, flat against the cold tile, heart trying to punch through her ribcage. She didn't move, didn't whisper, didn't make the mistake of thinking silence meant safety. The door handle shifted, just enough, stopped. Then 3 knocks, soft, too polite. Jamin didn't blink. The knocks came again, a rhythm, friendly, familiar. A man's voice followed, low, calm. "Parcel delivery." Nyla closed her eyes. They didn't send mailmen at midnight. Jamin didn't answer, neither did the house. The voice cleared its throat gently on the other side of the door. "Mr. Kwan," it said, "you left something behind." That did it. Not the name, the confidence. The handle turned slowly now. The lock clicked. Wrong sound. Jamin sprinted forward and slammed his shoulder into the door just as it opened. Wood cracked. A man grunted in surprise. The two collided, shadows tangling in the doorway. A gun skittered across the floor. Nyla grabbed it before she thought about it. Jamin twisted the man's arm and drove him backward into the railing. The stranger hit hard, groaned. Tried to reach for something behind his back. Jamin hit first, then again. The man collapsed in a simple heap of muscle and breath. Jamin scooped the dropped gun and kicked the door shut with his foot, threw the deadbolt back across. Silence exploded into the house all at once. Nyla was shaking. Not small, not weak. The kind that rattled from the inside out. Jamin stood in the doorway listening. Nothing. Too much of nothing. He crouched beside the unconscious man and pulled his jacket back. No badge, no ID, no tattoos, just skin, and a barcode inked behind the ear. Jamin stared for a second too long. That mark meant contracts, meaningless faces, disposable lives. This wasn't a hit. It was retrieval. He dragged the man into the living room and tied him to a chair with blind efficiency. Wrists, ankles, chest, neck free. Always leave air for answers. Nyla stood in the kitchen doorway watching the blood drip from his knuckles. "You've done this before," she said. "Yes," he replied. "Recently." "Yes," she swallowed. "On your wife's orders?" He paused, then answered honestly. "I don't know anymore." The man stirred, moaned, blinking as if waking from something warm into something very different. Jamin sat across from him, calm as stone. "What's your name?" he asked. The man spat blood, didn't answer. Jamin waited, then asked again, slow, patient. "What's your name?" The man laughed weakly. "Doesn't matter," he said. "Nothing ever does," Jamin replied. Then he leaned forward. Who sent you? The man coughed once, smiled through red teeth. Your wife. That single word laid itself across the room like a body. Nyla flinched. Jamin did not. Did she say I would be here? Jamin asked. No. Then why are you? The man's smile faltered. Because she taught us to follow the girl. Nyla's lungs forgot how to work. Jamin's eyes moved to her, slow, heavy. Speak, he ordered. The man did. She's worth more than you think, he said. You just didn't know what you were married to. Jamin exhaled through his nose. Not anger, calculation. And what am I married to? He asked. The man looked at Nyla, then back at him. A war, he whispered. Jamin stood. The chair creaked as the man's eyes followed him. Good, Jamin said. Because I was getting bored with peace. He turned to Nyla. Pack whatever you think matters, he said. We leave in 5 minutes. Nyla stared. So soon? Jamin glanced down at the man, then back up. They don't send one, he said. They sent a test. The man swallowed. Where are we going? Nyla asked. Jamin grabbed his jacket. Not the one he'd worn into the diner, the darker one, the one that meant something else. Somewhere your waitress outfit won't work, he said. She blinked, then nodded. The man laughed, low, broken. She's going to find you, he said. Jamin didn't look back. He opened the door to the kitchen, turned off the light, and said, She already has. Outside, engines started. Not one, several. The gala didn't know it was a crime scene. Crystal chandeliers dripped light onto marble floors. Music floated like perfume. Men in tailored suits and women in dresses worth more than small houses laughed into champagne. Money was breathing heavily in that room. Jamin walked into it like he owned silence. Nyla followed 2 steps behind him, wearing a dress borrowed from someone who would never report it missing. Her hair was pinned up. Her face was calm. Her pulse was not. Every instinct screamed that this place was wrong, too open, too elegant, too unarmed. Jamin didn't flinch. If anything, he looked at home. Servers passed by. Donors mingled. The city's biggest names shook hands under a banner about rebuilding neighborhoods they would never live in. Nyla watched Jamin's posture shift as the room revealed itself to him. He wasn't scanning for beauty. He was counting power, doors, exits, eyes, and then he stopped. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just still. Nyla felt it before she saw it. The temperature of the room changed. Across the ballroom, near a staircase curved like a throne, Yura Kwan stood in red silk, not moving, not smiling, watching, not the room, not the guests, him. Jamin didn't breathe for one slow count, then another. He walked toward her. Nyla stayed back, because something inside her whispered, this reunion did not belong to her. Yura turned just enough as he approached, like she sensed him in her bones, her lips curved, not warmly, precisely. My husband, she said, loud enough to carry, soft enough to cut. You're late. Jamin stopped in front of her. People smiled around them, waxed teeth, empty eyes. Traffic, he replied. You know how messy cities get when people move without permission. Yura studied his face, then his jacket, then his hands, searching for blood, for guilt, for weakness. And you, she said, glancing past him, at Neela. Her eyes flicked there only a moment, but it was long enough, too long. Nyla felt the weight hit her chest like a weight dropped from a height. Who is your guest? Yura asked. Jamin didn't look back. She's with me. A pause, a ripple. Men nearby shifted slightly, just enough to signal something invisible had cracked. Yura's smile sharpened. So interesting, she said, that you bring a waitress into my world. The word was not an accent, it was a wound. Nyla's fingers twitched. Jamin didn't move. She stopped being that yesterday, he said. A shadow crossed something in Yura's eyes. Subtle, quick, then smooth again. People change all the time, she said. Her gaze slid back to Nyla. And some pretend. The band struck a new note, loud, on purpose. Conversation rose, the crowd leaned in. This was entertainment now. Yura gestured toward the staircase. Walk with me, she said to her husband. He did. Nyla remained where she was, alone in a room full of witnesses, feeling seen in a way she had never been before. At the foot of the stairs, Yura leaned closer, low voice, dangerously soft. I hear you had a little accident tonight, she murmured. Yes, Jamin replied. Marriage. Her laugh was quiet, controlled. Careful, she said. You'll bruise my reputation. And you, he answered, will end mine if you keep breathing like that. That earned a flicker, not anger, not shock, interest. They reached the landing. The room spread below them like an obedient map. Yura placed one hand on the railing. And who exactly is your little shadow? She asked. Jamin didn't hesitate. She's mine. A hum rose in Yura's throat, the kind that meant she was pleased. Then she'll break beautifully, she replied. Down below, Nyla caught the way Yura's eyes shined. Not with jealousy, with ownership. Yura lifted her glass. To distractions, she toasted faintly. Jamin looked at her, then over her shoulder, at Neela, across the room, across a battlefield dressed as luxury. And something burned through him, cold, personal, defiant. This was no longer about business, no longer about territory, no longer about power. This was about the one thing Yura had never allowed him to keep, choice. The orchestra swelled. Laughter filled the air. Cameras flashed. And somewhere beneath the music, beneath the elegance, beneath the performance, a war began to whisper its first name. The truth didn't arrive softly. It arrived like a blade slid between ribs. Jamin didn't learn it from a whisper. He learned it from a ledger, not paper, digital, old code in a new shell. Nyla cracked into it from the backseat of a parked car 3 streets from the gala, fingers flying like she was playing something only she could hear. Jamin sat in the front, silent, watching headlights pass like guilty thoughts. Then her breath hitched, not fear, recognition. She turned the screen toward him. He did not need help understanding. Accounts layered under shell companies, transfers buried under charities, numbers too big to belong anywhere honest, all moving in one direction toward her, Yura, not as a partner, not as a beneficiary, as the architect. Jamin's jaw slowed. He did not blink. Nyla spoke first. She didn't marry into your world, she said. She built you into it. The sentence landed heavy enough to dent memory. Moments rewound in his head like tape burning backward. The war that sparked out of nowhere. The deal that should have collapsed, but didn't. The rival who disappeared with no explanation. The city that kept bending around him like he'd paid it to. He had. Just not directly. Every route you sit on, she touched first, Neela continued. Every enemy you fought, she pointed quietly. Jamin leaned forward, elbows on the wheel, breathed in, out, once, twice. A soft sound slid through his throat. Not denial, laughter, low, cracked. She married me to wear me, he said. Nyla nodded. She married you to disappear behind you. The car went quiet. Jamin closed his eyes and finally understood the shape of his life. He had not climbed. He had been placed, all that ambition, all that blood, all that silence he thought was control. It had been direction. Why didn't she kill me? He asked. Nyla swallowed. Because you're more useful alive. He opened his eyes. Still am, he said. Another beam of light cut across the windshield, then vanished. He checked mirrors, then turned back toward her. When did you know? He asked. At the garage, she said, 3 weeks ago. Not when you warned me, when you knew, her voice dropped. When she moved money the same way people move bodies, carefully, quietly, forever. Everything in him hardened. This wasn't betrayal. This was possession. A knock on the glass startled them both. Jamin's hand went to the door weapon without thinking, but it wasn't a shooter, just a valet, lost, confused, apologetic. The world still ran for everyone else. That somehow hurt more. When the kid vanished again, Neela exhaled. "She never planned to let you go," Nyla said. "No," Jamin replied. "She planned to finish me." His phone vibrated, once, 2 seconds later, again, then again. He ignored it, because there were things worse than knowing, like waiting to confirm it. Nyla shifted in her seat. "You're shaking," she said softly. He looked down. His hands were still. His voice was not. "I'm not shaking," he said. "I'm rearranging." Another message, then another, then another. He exhaled through his teeth and finally looked. One word, over and over, return. He laughed again, this time without sound. "She thinks this was a performance," he said. "A tantrum." Nyla leaned forward. "And if you don't go?" Jamin stared through the windshield, at red lights bleeding into rain, at strangers kissing in stopped traffic, at a city that had no idea its shadow had a queen. "She won't chase me," he finally said. "She'll rewrite me." Nyla stiffened. He turned just enough to face her. "And you," he went on, "are not a complication." Her lips parted. "Your leverage." Silence. It cracked, then spread. "That doesn't make me feel better," she said. "It shouldn't," he replied. "It makes you alive." Her throat worked. "Does that mean—" she began. "No," he said. "It means I won't trade you." She studied his face, looking for cracks, found only something colder than love. Choice. "She thinks she owns everything she touches," he continued. "Tonight she learns she touched fire." Nyla nodded, slow, certain. "Then stop running," she said. He glanced at her. He had not expected that. She met his eyes. "If she built you," she said, "you're the only one who knows where she made mistakes." The idea settled. Sharp, perfect. Jamin started the engine. Not to flee, to move first. The car pulled out, merged into traffic, vanished into the bloodstream of the city. Behind them, somewhere high above silk and light and glass, a woman waited. And in her waiting, believed she had already won. They drove until the city thinned into shadow. Streetlights gave way to dark stretches of highway where headlights became lonely stars, blinking past in opposite directions. Jamin turned off the GPS, tossed the phone into the cup holder like it had offended him, and took an exit that wasn't supposed to exist. An old industrial pocket of the city waited there, warehouses with names painted over, windows boarded like eyelids sealed shut. Silence that didn't belong to sleep. He parked beneath a gutted billboard and killed the engine. For a moment, neither of them moved. Rain ticked softly on the roof. Nyla pulled the flash drive from her jacket and held it like a confession she wasn't ready to make. "I didn't give you everything," she said. Jamin didn't look at her. "Good," he replied. "It means you're still alive." She exhaled, the sound thin and tight. "There's a second layer," she said. "Not accounts, not money, people." That finally pulled his eyes to her. "Explain." Nyla leaned forward and opened her laptop on her knees. The screen lit their faces in pale blue. "I copied what I thought mattered," she said. "What I didn't realize was that something else copied me." He frowned. She typed, once, then again. A new window surfaced. Old code, ugly code. Code that hated being found. Nyla's fingers slowed, then stopped. Jamin felt the change in her before he saw it. "That's not a ledger," he said. "No," she whispered. The file opened. And the world inside it was wrong. Names listed out of order, birth dates scrambled, addresses reversed, faces where photos should have been, a system built not to remember, but to erase. Nyla scrolled, slower now, like she was walking through a room full of ghosts. These aren't clients, she murmured. They're suspensions. Of what? She swallowed. Of existence. Jamin leaned closer. What is this? She scrolled again and then stopped. One name burned through the screen, not her own, his, not the one the city used, the one nobody did, the one he buried when he stopped being young enough to survive it, his real name. He stared. The air thinned. How is that there? He asked quietly. Nyla didn't answer. She didn't have to. She scrolled left. Dates appeared, events, locations, points in time where his life had blurred or vanished. You were flagged before you were powerful, she said. Before money, before territory, before anyone feared you. His fingers clenched. Someone had been watching him before he knew how to look back. Nyla kept going, and then she flinched, hard. Stop, he said. She tried. The file kept moving, not responding, not obeying. Jamin, she breathed. The screen flickered, then resolved into something clean, too clean, a single folder, named in all caps, Project Ward. His chest tightened. What is that? He asked. Nyla opened it. And the file inside didn't load in numbers. It loaded in faces, hundreds of them, thousands. Men, women, teenagers, entire families. Each face stamped with quiet red markings in places that meant something only to whoever had built this nightmare. Deaths that weren't recorded. Names that weren't spoken. Lives that had been paused. Your wife didn't just move money, Nyla whispered. She moves people. Jamin leaned back in his seat like the car had suddenly tilted. Not betrayal, not affairs, not even murder. This was a factory. And I was built inside it, he said softly. Nyla looked at him. Not built, she corrected. Cataloged. The word dug deep. He stared at the screen, at faces that looked like people he could have known, people he might have passed on sidewalks, people who might have laughed in diners. Why show me this? He asked finally. Why now? Nyla wiped her eyes furiously. I don't think, she said, that this file was meant for me. He waited. I think it was meant for you, she finished. Jamin's phone vibrated again. This time he answered it. He didn't put it to his ear. He just let the voice speak into the car. Yura's voice filled the space like silk stretched over steel. Come home, she said. You're embarrassing yourself. He smiled, cold, small. It's late, he replied. And you've been lying for years. A pause, not a breath, just timing. You saw the file, she said. Not a question, a victory lap. You wanted me to, he said. Another pause, then, I wanted you to understand, Yura replied. You don't get betrayed by queens, you get used. Nyla's hands trembled. Jamin didn't hide it. You built all of this, he said. Yes, Yura replied. For you. For you, he countered. She laughed softly. You really still think there's a line between us? He closed his eyes once, opened them. There is now, he said. Silence sat between them, deep, satisfied. Then her voice returned. Where is she? Yura asked. Jamin's eyes flicked to Nyla. Then back to the empty windshield. Still breathing, he said. A sound passed through the phone. Psst, not anger, amusement. I allowed that, Yura said. The word allowed hung in the air like poison. Jamin ended the call. Nyla stared at him. She knew, Nyla whispered. She planned it, he replied. A truck roared past on the highway above them, unseen and enormous. Jamin closed the laptop, slowly, as if sealing a tomb. Then he turned to Nyla. Sit back, he said. Her voice barely worked. Why? He put the car in gear. Because the woman who owns this city, he said, has already come for you. The engine growled, the night leaned in, and something ancient and patient inside Yura's empire began to move. They didn't go back to the road. Jamin slipped the car through back streets that dissolved into service lanes and then into a sloping neighborhood where houses leaned toward one another like conspirators. He parked beneath a jacaranda tree, shedding purple petals onto cracked pavement, and killed the engine. Nyla stared through the windshield. "I thought you were going to run," she said. "I am," he replied, "just not away." They stepped out into quiet that didn't belong to sleep. Somewhere a radio murmured through a window. Somewhere else a dog barked once and went silent like it had been told not to be brave. Inside a small bungalow lit by one stubborn lamp, Jamin locked the door and switched the light off. He stood in shadow, listening the way people listen when they expect their name to be said by something ugly. Nyla sat at a narrow kitchen table and placed the flash drive in the center, like it might start talking if she didn't. "Before you say anything," Jamin said low, "understand this. Secrets don't save you here. They only decide who bleeds first." Nyla folded her hands, then unfolded them, then pressed her palms flat to the table. "You weren't chosen at random," she said. He didn't ask for clarification. She reached into her bag and drew out a folded photo, its edges soft with worry. Not glossy, not professional, a cheap print taken in bad light. Two people stood in front of a school mural that had long been painted over. One of them was her, younger, braver. The other. Jamin went very still. The photo showed a version of himself that did not exist anymore. Hair too long, jaw too soft. Eyes not yet trained to look past mercy. Nyla slid the photo toward him. "You don't remember that place," she said. "But I do. It burned down 2 years later." He didn't touch it. "Why do you have that?" he asked. Her voice shook once, then steadied. "Because they taught me it was dangerous to keep your real name," she said, "and impossible to kill a story you don't understand." He closed his eyes for exactly 1 second, then opened them. "Then tell it," he said. She took a breath, the kind people take when they don't expect to be allowed to finish. "My mother worked at a clinic no one went to unless they didn't want to be seen," she said. "You came through once, not for yourself, for someone else." His brows drew together. "I was young," she continued. "I thought heroes looked like firemen. You looked like someone who had already lost." His chest tightened. "After that night," she said, "men came asking questions that didn't sound like questions. My mother started hiding things in walls, letters, photos, names that weren't supposed to exist." She paused. "Your name existed," she said. He picked up the photograph at last, looked, long. "Why come to me now?" he asked. "Because they found the clinic," she replied. "And the house after it, and the house after that." He thought of the barcode behind the man's ear in the safe house. Contracts, extraction, erasure. "And you warned me," he said. "Not yourself." Nyla's mouth curved into something that was almost a smile. "I tried," she said, "but I wasn't brave enough until the wrong night." Silence pattered about the small room like an animal that had learned not to hunt. Finally, Jamin spoke. "You don't know how many names die in my life," he said. "How many faces get lost when a season changes?" Nyla nodded. "That's why I brought the only one that mattered." He held the photo like it might answer back. "Who taught you where to find me?" he asked. Nyla lifted her eyes. "Someone who also didn't want their name to survive," she said. "Someone who said you'd understand loss better than anyone." Jamin went still again. "Say it," he whispered. She shook her head. "I will," she said. "Just not yet. They taught me patience first." His laugh was thin. "And trust," he said. "No," she corrected. "Distance." He set the photograph down carefully as though it might shatter if he didn't. "This doesn't make you safe," he said. Nyla met his eyes. "It makes me real." Outside, a car passed too slow to belong to traffic. Jamin crossed to the window and checked the street through broken blinds. "Pack," he said. "Light." Nyla stood. "Where now?" He turned, back to the photo, back to her. "To the only places my wife never touched," he said. the places she thought were too small to matter. Nyla nodded once, then reached for her bag. Behind them, in a city that pretended nothing had changed, lights continued to blink like secrets, and somewhere much higher, in a glass tower that still believed in itself, a woman waited with a smile she rarely practiced. The places she never touched were quieter than Jamin expected, not empty, just ignored. They moved before sunrise, shifting cars twice, slipping through neighborhoods that didn't make the news and wouldn't be missed if they burned. Jamin finally stopped at a converted machine shop near an abandoned rail line, the building half hidden behind a collapsed billboard advertising something that died 20 years ago. Inside, the air smelled like rust and old oil. This place remembered men who worked with their hands and went home with them still dirty. Jamin liked that. He locked the door the way he locked everything else. With care, with history. Nyla set her bag down and leaned against a workbench that had been scarred by tools that didn't pretend to be gentle. "You've been here before," she said. He nodded. "Years ago," he replied, "before I learned how expensive silence could be." She walked slowly through the room, fingers tracing grooves in metal. "Then she doesn't know this place exists." He almost smiled. "Not as anything useful," he said. They didn't speak again for several minutes. The building listened while they rested. Nyla finally broke the quiet. "They're coming anyway," she said. "Yes," he replied. "And soon." He nodded again. That scared her more than denial ever could. She sat at a narrow desk bolted into the wall and opened her laptop. The screen lit the room in a hard rectangle. "For what it's worth," she said, "whatever they're planning, it's not just you." He leaned against a pillar. "It never is." She worked in silence. Her fingers were different now, not hurried, deliberate, like she'd stopped hoping the world would ask permission. "Jamin," she said finally, "they want you alive. That makes everything worse." He didn't ask her to explain. They both already knew. Alive meant leverage. Alive meant spectacle. Alive meant enough time to ruin you properly. His phone vibrated, not loudly, just once. He checked it, then stiffened. "It's Yura," he said. Nyla froze. He didn't answer. The phone vibrated again, then again. He silenced it. "Don't," Nyla whispered. Jamin looked at her, measured, careful. "I'm not running from voices anymore," he said. He answered. Yura's voice poured into the room, smooth as something poured to poison. "You always choose the ugliest places when you sulk," she said. He didn't respond. She continued anyway. "I know where you are," she added. That hit Nyla visibly. Jamin didn't flinch. "Then you know why I'm here," he said. Her tone softened. "That's what frightens me." He smiled, not kindly. "Good." A pause, then, "I told them not to send anyone after you," Yura said. "Of course you did," he replied. "And they listened," she continued, "until you brought her with you." Nyla held her breath. Jamin's voice dropped. "You don't own her." Yura laughed gently. "I invented her," she said. Nyla's skin went cold. "Say that again," Jamin said. "I saw her name long before she did," Yura replied. "Before she grew into it, before she learned she could scare men like you, I paid people to keep her alive." Nyla's knees weakened. She sat hard. "And tonight," Yura went on, "you made her expensive." The room felt smaller, like the walls had learned how to lean. Jamin lowered the phone just enough to look at Nyla. "Your move," his eyes said. She nodded once, barely. "Why didn't you kill me?" Nyla asked into the phone. Yura didn't hesitate. "Because dead girls don't lead men anywhere." Nyla swallowed. "And where did you want me to lead him?" "To home," Yura replied. Jamin shut his eyes, then opened them. "And now?" he asked. "Now," Yura said. "You've both taken too long to arrive." The line went dead. Silence returned. But it wasn't alone anymore. Something moved outside. Not cars, not people. Boots, light, mechanical breath. Jamin's hand found a weapon on instinct. "They're here," Nyla whispered. He nodded. "And they're not loud," he said. "They never are," she replied. A shadow passed beneath the broken window, then another. A red dot crawled across the far wall like it was alive. Nyla looked at him. No words left to offer, just truth. Jamin placed himself in front of her, between her and everything else. He didn't say he would protect her, he just did it. The door shuddered, once, twice, then silence, the kind before screaming. The first sound wasn't a shot, it was glass. A soft, deliberate shatter from somewhere high on the building's skin, like a quiet decision finally being made. Jamin didn't move to the window. He didn't need to. He already knew where they'd enter. Nyla stood behind him, steadying her breath so it wouldn't betray her. "They boxed us," she whispered. "Yes," he said, "and they're patient." The lights inside the shop flickered once, then settled into something too calm. That calm didn't belong to safety, it belonged to control. A voice came through a small speaker above the door, not Yura's, a man's voice, polite, clinical. "As instructed, please remain where you are." Nyla's mouth twitched. "That's new?" Jamin reached into his jacket and removed something that didn't look dangerous at all, a thin silver card, almost weightless. "What's that?" she asked. "A key," he replied. "To rooms my wife thought she'd sealed." He slid the card beneath a floor panel and pressed down twice. A low hum answered back like the shop had woken from a long dream. Somewhere beyond the walls, the polite voice went quiet. Nyla's screen flickered, then filled with movement. Doors across the building opened at once, not violently, not loudly, like the place had decided on a new heartbeat. Jamin met her eyes. "Now," he said. They went down, not into a basement, into a memory. A narrow hall revealed itself beneath the shop, clean in a way nothing else in that building was. LEDs burned softly along the floor like a runway no one ever expected to land on. They moved fast, not frantic, focused. Above them, the machine shop breathed again. This time it sounded busy. Nyla's phone buzzed. Unknown number, then again. Then a video feed lit her screen uninvited. Glass and silk, lights the color of money, a crowd in formal wear, a room she recognized, the penthouse. Yura stood in the center of it, immaculate even from a distance. Men and women with fear polished into confidence surrounded her like furniture. Yura raised a glass. The sound carried, not through speakers, but through expectation. "Tonight's donor reception has moved downstairs," she said smoothly. "The view is better from the ground." Nyla's stomach dropped. Downstairs wasn't a location. It was an outcome. Jamin watched the feed over her shoulder, face unreadable. "She's done waiting," Nyla said. "Yes," he replied. "She's performing." They reached a door at the end of the corridor. Jamin pressed his palm to the metal. It read him in ways no city ever had. The door slid open. Not tonight, to light, marble, music. They stepped through into another world entirely. The gala had hollowed out. Guests hovered in clusters that didn't look like groups anymore. They looked like decisions waiting to be made. Cameras were everywhere, not press, testimony. Yura stood at the center of the floor now, not elevated, not hidden, public, on purpose. When her eyes met Jamin's across the room, she didn't smile. She welcomed. "We ready?" she asked the room lightly. No one answered. They didn't have to. All of this was already a speech. Jamin walked forward, not fast, not slow, right. Nyla stayed close, stomach tight, lungs working too hard. When he stopped a few feet from Yura, the room leaned in. "Return finished yet?" Yura asked. "Only part of it," he replied. She tilted her head. Curious as a cat looking at something that had learned to speak back. "And the girl?" she asked. Jamin moved one step sideways, not away, in front. Nyla disappeared behind him the way people do when they trust a shadow with their life. Yura's eyes dropped for a moment, then lifted again, satisfied. "You ruined my evening," she said. Again. "You ruined my name," he replied. The temperature in the room changed, not colder, sharper. Yura looked around as if addressing everyone at once. "You see," she said, "what happens when men forget where they were placed?" She turned back to him. "I took you from nobody," Yura continued softly. "I introduced you to power. I taught the world to pronounce your importance. And then you taught it to forget my humanity," he said. Something behind her eyes flickered. Not guilt, calculation. "Humanity is a phase," she said. "Power is a profession." A line of men shifted behind her, not security, witnesses. "I gave you everything," Yura said. Jamin lifted his chin. "You gave yourself a costume," he said, "and wore me underneath it." Silence rippled, the kind that carries secrets better than sound. Yura inhaled slowly, then let it go. "You always wanted to be chosen," she said. "I simply made it official." He looked over her shoulder, at the room, at the faces that could end a man's life by deciding not to see him. "And I chose you back," he continued, "until I learned you don't love anything you can't replace." Her mouth stilled, for an instant. Then the silk returned. "Fine," Yura said lightly. "Then let's replace you." She lifted her glass again, not a toast this time, a signal. Across the room, attention shifted like furniture being rearranged in a fire. Nyla felt it first, the change, the decision moving into position. Yura looked at her then, not with hatred, with assessment. "As for you," she said, voice barely louder than breath, "you were never meant to survive the reveal." Nyla's fingers curled around nothing she could use, around courage maybe, around something like it. Jamin spoke without looking back. "She already did," he said. "Twice." Yura laughed once, a perfect sound. "Then," she said, "let's see how far it carries her." And the room answered, not with noise, with movement. Tables shifted, people stepped away. Space opened around Jamin and Nyla like a wound learning where to bleed. Yura looked almost gentle when she spoke again. "Goodbye," she said. And in that word, Atlanta held its breath. No one screamed. That was the first strange thing. When the first body moved, when the first glass shattered, when the first gun appeared in a hand that had been holding champagne 5 seconds ago, the sound the room made wasn't panic, it was calculation. People didn't run, they separated, cleanly, like a crowd rehearsed this moment in secret. Jamin felt the shift instantly. It wasn't chaos, it was choreography. He pulled Nyla with him just as a man lunged from the left. A tray crashed to the floor, plates shattered like applause. Someone in a silver dress dropped to her knees, wailing too late. Jamin moved Nyla behind a marble pillar, then he moved again. Never stayed still long enough to be owned by anything. Across the room, Yura didn't duck, didn't step back, didn't blink. She walked, straight, confident. As if chaos was the sea and she was born to part it. Men cleared a path for her without thinking, not because she ordered it, because their bodies remembered who mattered. Jamin tracked her through motion and fear and falling light. Nyla heard it before she saw it, the tremor, a low hum beneath the noise. Not nature, engine, then impact. The far wall didn't just crack, it rethought itself. Concrete crashed inward. A black vehicle burst through the side of the building like the city had finally exhaled something it had swallowed. Smoke poured in. Fire alarms howled. The orchestra collapsed in a metallic scream. Yura turned toward the opening just as Jamin lifted a fallen weapon from the floor. He didn't aim at her, he aimed at the glass ceiling above her. The shot wasn't heard, it was felt. The ceiling burst like a sky giving up rain and glass, and chandelier light collapsed together in a roar of money and ruin. Guests screamed at last. The room broke into story. Yura didn't run. She stepped precisely backward, out of danger, into a waiting shadow that had opened like a mouth behind her. Jamin pushed through the crowd. Nyla followed, hands against marble, heart betraying her ribs. They reached the pit where the car had punched the building. Jamin saw it then. Not a rescue, not an ambush, a door. Yura didn't look back. Her silhouette vanished into the smoke and steel, as if she'd never learned how to exist any other way. Jamin chased, one step too late. The vehicle pulled away in a scream of tore-up concrete and money, and then she was gone like she'd practiced leaving her whole life. The alarms escalated. Blue and red sliced the air. People lay where lies had rested moments ago. The gala dissolved into sirens. Nyla reached Jamin and grabbed his arm. She's gone, she said. He knew. He just hadn't accepted it yet. Hay didn't stay. Not for explanations, not for witnesses, not for closure. They fled through fire exits and closed mouths and stares reeking of perfume and panic until the city swallowed them again like it always did. On a roof 3 buildings away, they finally stopped. The night was wet. The skyline burned in pieces. Nyla folded at the knees, breath shaking. Jamin stood at the edge and stared at the place where his life had been dressed up and set on fire. She didn't lose, Nyla whispered. No, he said. She changed chapters. Below them, sirens stalked the streets. Above them, helicopters cut circles into the dark. His phone vibrated in his hand. He didn't look at it at first. When he did, there was only one message. No sender, no ornament, no mercy. The war isn't over. It just changed names. He closed his eyes, not in grief, in readiness. Nyla stood beside him now, close, equal, not a waitress, not a ghost, a beginning that refused to leave quietly. What happens next? She asked. Jamin looked out at a city that had no idea it had been spared or claimed. Next, he said, we stop running from a woman who thinks she owns history. Nyla nodded, once, firm. And after that? He looked at her, really looked, for the first time without guns or smoke between them. After that, he said, we write her ending. A helicopter passed overhead, close enough to feel. The city blinked below them. And somewhere in the dark, a queen without a crown was already building another.